Hey guys, this is Vince with Practical Performance. This is the third part of us in a series of videos where we're installing the rear VinceBar in E46 convertible. So in this episode, we will be removing the paint to these two surfaces here, the end plates. They're most important on top of this floor panel where the strip of the VinceBar will be sitting, and as good as we can on the inside here where the arced strip is on the back side. So first of all, to get to the side here, I'm going to just push these down on both sides using this disc. I believe it's called a stripping disc. It's very efficient in any case. I've started doing the surfaces for the end plates. This is again a epoxy rivet version, and I just went to pretty much the outline which I described. Had this been a weld version, you would gone a little bit further out because you're going to do the plug welds and then stitch weld around, and you want to have the paint removed for the stitch welds. Again, using the stripping disc, I removed the paint on most of the top strip here. I'm going to be using my Dremel with the grinding disc for these end pieces. For the inside of the wheel well strip here, I'm testing out. I usually do just sandpaper here, but holding this like that and going carefully around, you can remove quite a lot of paint at least, and then probably do a last round with some sanding paper. Over here, I believe, so the insides here, we also want to, because of the small strips on the VinceBar, we want to remove some paint as well. Pushing this down far enough, you can get this in here as well to get enough paint off of it. So I'm gonna just do a pass with sanding paper and then clean this up. I highly recommend that you clean up after a session like this, just to keep it nice and tidy. Having this cleaned up, it's so much nicer to get to the next stage of the work. I also want to mention that for the epoxy rivet version, we are removing paint on the back side here. The weld version, obviously, when you have the larger plug weld holes, you would be removing paint on the outside and probably as good as you could on the inside, but you will be plug welding, so you need to remove some paint, probably all of it. Now, we will later on apply epoxy to the mating surfaces. Again, if you are installing the weld-in version, you will be having probably weld-through primer on the same surfaces. Anyway, it's time to do the last sort of test install and fitment, and what we're looking for now is like a really tight fit. During this final test fitment, first of all I bent these upwards again. I recommend putting your fingers as far down as you can when you bend it, so you don't just bend this top part. Same thing on both sides. I placed the I have the patch plates under the bar for the epoxy rivet version, and then I've tightened it down using the wheel bolts again. So what I'm looking for is the best fit I can get for the end plates. So on the left side, I have a really nice and tight fit. Possibly I will give it a tap down here just to close that. It's not critical. However, on the other side, and I hope I can get this to show, there you go, I have quite a bit of a gap there. This has probably have some a bit of a hit. Maybe I dropped it at some point, or it's just the warping from the welding. In any case, remove the bar, and here's how I adjust the end plates. Either so you want something heavy and go easy, rather than having a small hammer and hit it hard, and more control this way. So I like to use this plastic heavy hammer, mallet, or whatever it's called. So I will be off camera holding this bar with one hand and then sort of tapping outwards and sort of checking as I'm going in the car, and I'll check back with you when I have a nice couple of rounds removing the bar, tapping it and putting it back in, testing. I'm now happy with the fitment. So when I was doing the testing, I actually didn't tighten the bolts at the start. I just sort of pushed it into place to see how I was doing, and now I finally torqued it down, or again tightened it down, and There you go. That fitment is very nice. And same thing over here where we had the large gap before, we're fine. Being happy with the fitment of the end plates, I'm now turning my attention to the fitment, or minimize the gap between the wheel well panel, the floor panel, and the VinceBar strip. One way of doing that is you poke a little pick like this, feel in between how much gap is there. On this side it's pretty good. On the other side over here, the gap is significantly larger, and you can also tell through this gap here. Now, with the epoxy rivet version, this is less critical, as these actually very great steel rivets clamp these together, but you want to get it as close as you can anyway. So I'm going to be removing this, and also, so I'm going to be removing the bar and tapping the arc strip sort of backwards, if you will, and test fitting again. For the weld version, this is pretty critical because you have nothing clamping it together. So you want these to be pretty much touching each other as best you can for the plug welds, unless you're using temporary screws or something like that, which is a very good idea. Anyway, I'm going off to adjust. I'm happy with the fitment. I'm going to remove the bar, paint the underside. Any part that's not visible can be painted from the outside when it's finally installed. Apart obviously from the surfaces where we will be having the epoxy. So the underside of the strip over here, the near side of it, and the end plates on the outside, I will tape and then paint the underside. If you're installing the weld version of the VinceBar, you will be doing some painting on the underside. You will not be doing the roughening of the surfaces. Instead, you will probably be adding weld-through primer to both the end plate outsides and the chassis rails. Probably also weld-through primer on the underside of the strip, as well as on the top side here where the strip goes, and the arc strip here as well. On the rest, you probably want to add to paint just for rust protection as well. As I'm installing the epoxy rivet version of the VinceBar and will be using the patch plates, I also took the opportunity to paint the top side of the patch plates along with the VinceBar. Here's the bar with the underside painted. So I masked the underside of this front strip because we were going to be epoxying the surface. I have painted the underside of the bar. I let some paint. I also painted these inside areas here because they're difficult to get to. So the front side of the strip is painted. We spin this around, we can see that I masked the rear side of the strip because that's again a surface that will be epoxied. I've also painted this section here, as some of it will not be accessible once we install the VinceBar and do the final painting. So paint on the underside of this and over here. And I did not touch the outside of the end plates at all. Those are obviously also going to be epoxied. So with that said, oh yeah, and also I did not paint the top side of these strips. They will also be epoxied. Now during the final painting, we'll be doing the top side with whatever paint matching the exterior paint we want to do. I will be moving on now with the surface prepping for the epoxying. So I'm going to be roughening the epoxy surfaces. I had a coffee break when this was drying. If you want to shoot this in one go, you paint this and you start by doing the surface prepping on the car itself. But again, I'm going to be doing the surface prepping in this next step to show you how the surface prepping is really about cleaning the surface. First of all, I used alcohol. In this case, you could use brake cleaner or whatever. And then we're going to be roughening this surface. I'll use the grinding disc on my angle grinder. It's used, that's actually a benefit. If it's jagged, that's even better, because we're going to be balancing this on the surface so we get a rough surface. If there's any high spots, there's some weld penetration there. I'll actually remove that as well. So I'm going to show this on this one single end plate, The same method applies, the same principle applies for all of these surfaces, both on the bar and in the car as well. So this here is the kind of surface we're looking for, the rough surface. Again, I just moved this around, let it bounce a little bit to get that rough surface that the epoxy can bite into. I'm going to go off camera and prepare the other surfaces as well as the surfaces inside. As the grinding disc won't let us get into that corner, I use again the Dremel and let that bounce around with the grinding disc. So again, we have the end plates, we have the underside of the front strip, we have the rear side of the arc strip, and then... So these are the surfaces in the car prepped with a rough surface. The surfaces where the end plates go are the most critical, so make sure those are rough, really rough. Also did the top of the strip here. The surfaces where the patch plates go, we did in a previous step. But again, so these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 surfaces is what you should have done in terms of prepping the really rough. So it's time for the final installation with the epoxy and rivets. So apart from the prepped bar and the prepped patch plates, you will want to have handy your epoxy gun with the appropriate epoxy, your rivet gun, a stubby brush to spread out the epoxy, the rivets that come with the VinceBar kit, as well as brake cleaner and a couple of wheel bolts. So I'm going to start off by showing the principle, the method with the patch plates, and then move on to the bar itself. What you want to do is just clean the surfaces once more, the mating surfaces, just to get rid of any fingerprints or oily glove prints or anything like that. I'm just adding some epoxy with the gun. I believe this is adequate. We don't have to go crazy with the amount because we're going to do the same thing to the corresponding mating surfaces in the car as well. So once this is done, I'm going to smear it out with the stubby paste, leaves us with this result. So now I'm going to go off and do the same in the surface. I've now added, using the gun, added epoxy. So I've added a little bit extra in the slots of the cut T and a little bit here where there's a low point. And I'm going to smear that out, and then we're going to add the make sure that I smear some epoxy, extra epoxy into the slots just to close them up. With the patch plate positioned, we're just going to leave it there. It's going to be clamped down with the bar later on, so no rivets or anything here. Now we're going to move on to the actual bar and the mating surface. First of all, clean the mating surfaces by spraying them with brake cleaner. Just like with the patch plates, I'm using the epoxy gun to just apply some epoxy and then smearing it down. Make sure to work it into the metal. I'm also using some of the epoxy to protect the bare metal from rust, the ones that whatever bare metal we haven't painted since before. So I'm going to move on and off camera do the curved strip, the arc strip, and the end plates, and also the top side of these strips. The end plates, the most critical part is this section here. I'm still going to be adding some epoxy down here as well for rust protection. I'll now add epoxy to the end plate mating surfaces on top of the strip here, and as best I can on the underside of these where the strips go, and on the back side of this where the arc strip goes. So I'll do the I'll save these two for last because there could still be some dirt there that I don't want to have into the critical surfaces. So I'll start by doing these, both end plates, and then the strip, and I'll move on to the end plates and the strip. I'm adding epoxy just as I did with the patch plates. For the back side of this area and the arced strip here, I'm adding epoxy to the brush and sticking the brush in behind and applying it as best I can. That's done. I placed the VinceBar just as before, and we're going to start by tightening the putting the wheel bolts in and tightening the bar to sit in its position. Once the bar is tightened, it's sitting its correct position. I'm testing that the rivets fit in their holes. There could be that you need to drill out just a little bit if there's a little bit of deviation. And please remember that the shorter, the smaller 4.8, the shorter 4.8 goes in the two front holes, in the rest of the holes, you use the long. When riveting, I always start in the middle and work my way out, and that way pushing any excess epoxy out to the edges. I'm using this simple, cheap rivet gun. It's tough with these 4.8 rivets, but it works. Plates are secured with the 4.8 millimeter, the larger rivets. We're going for the front strip, and I'm switching over to the smaller 3.2. Moving on to the arch strip. I did need to run the drill bit through the holes just to get a little bit more play to get the rivets in easily. As you can see, these outmost rivets, they have plenty of space. They do not bottom out. The middle ones, however, do. So either you, as you are tightening them, you sort of push the gun inwards, or it's actually not a bad idea either. We can drill for these middle ones, these 4 middle ones, we drill through that additional layer as well. I ended up drilling through the 3 layers for all of the rivets except for the 2 outmost on both sides. For those, you need to press the gun inwards as you... To the last of the riveting. So we are going to be drilling through this and into that strip at this time. And we will be pushing this. First of all, we need to push this in and see if we can get it to stick as far in as possible. It will flex back, as you can see. Then we drill to go pretty far in, and I've drilled the hole. You want that to be sort of that distance down. You don't want to be too close because you won't fit the tricky. You may need to give it a couple of goes, but what I did is I placed my rivet gun like this, and I pressed it hard inwards as I was compressing the rivet. All the riveting is done. I've ran the stubby paintbrush around any area where there was excess epoxy, just sort of evened it out. I added some epoxy over there, additional, and over here to make it look better. And the wheel bolts, they are temporary. They are to sit there until the epoxy has cured. I usually leave it overnight, but as I have a lot of other stuff to do, I just leave them there as long as I can. Once you remove them, you will be running the threading tap from the bottom up again to clear the threads from any epoxy that we might have introduced into the thread as we were putting these in at the last. I will be following this up with another part where we will be applying primer, seam sealer, paint, top coat, and making it look nice. So that those will be my recommendations. The final installation I will probably have in a separate series where I reinstall the rear axle and the through bolts. So anyway, this concludes the installation. Thanks for watching, and please give it a like.